Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. It's Sunday, which means it's stream time, and today we're talking about heroic. Um, for folks who know me and know the folks that I know, um, heroic is going to be. Yeah, but why am I talking about it? Well, first of all, Bear has been doing a ton of work, the creator of the game, to talk about it and support it and spread it out. He's doing live plays. He's doing streams about it. Um, but I felt it was maybe a good idea to have somebody talk about it independent of his work. So what I'm going to present today are my thoughts on the game and kind of why I think that this is a game worth not only supporting but also playing. I mean, I think it's fair to say that a lot of us will back Kickstarters, especially those made by people we know or our friends, simply to be supportive, um, but maybe not necessarily with any intention of ever using the material or playing with or anything. But this is not one of those. I've been very excited about this since it first came out, and I'm going to talk about why. First of all, good morning to the folks who are here. I saw we had From the Hill, we have Saxius. I'm not sure how many folks we're going to get this morning because it is also Mother's Day. So, to all the mothers out there and the people who have mothers, which I'm pretty sure is everybody except for maybe the clones and aliens and robots in my audience, happy Mother's Day. Um, uh, to you who are the mothers, to those who filled the role, and to those who have moms, or maybe you're married to a mom. Um, I'm lucky enough my mother's still alive, so I'm going to have to end up giving her a call later on. But I also know that there are people in my life who don't have the greatest moms, and if not for my wife, um, wouldn't really have a mom. My wife is wonderful in that she took on the role of extra kids. You've heard me talk about my bonus kids before, but that's not what we're here to talk about. But that is also possibly the explanation as to why we're not going to have that's full of an audience today. I imagine there's a lot of brunch and breakfasts and beds and things going on. So let me start with why, well, the background of why I think that Heroic is very much um, a worthwhile endeavor and worth supporting and playing. More importantly, worth playing. Um, so I am a huge fan of the original Marvel Superheroes role playing game from, I believe, 1984, um, released by TSR. When that came on the scene, I was very much enamored with it. I had played around and tinkered with other game systems like Villains and Vigilantes, a little bit of the Hero system, and had even kit bashed my own systems with my friends because we were just comic guys and we wanted to make our own teams and then we wanted to play out stories with those teams. But Marvel Superheroes came along. Originally, it was that yellow box, the basic game, the original game, and then later on, the advanced game came out, which really just turned the game up to 11 and brought it where it needs to be. I mean, that yellow box was definitely worthwhile and certainly no slouch. But here we had a game that I have always attested is very much probably the best made set of rules for a superhero game. The rules feed into the genre and they support the genre of play perfectly. Um, and that's what you want in a game. There's a lot of games that are superhero games, but they're built on other systems, or they were built early enough to where they're emulating other systems. Mutants and Masterminds, for example, is a popular one, but it's really kind of built on the framework of the D20 system. Villains and Vigilantes, it's a good game. It's an old game too, and I think in a lot of ways shows its pedigree in the way that it's built. Hero system is, the Champions hero system is a solid way to create a game that allows you to make anything, but the system definitely comes before the play. The system in that is really great for creating superheroes, but it doesn't do a lot to support the playing of superheroes. Some people will argue that. I know there's a lot of diehard Champions fans out there, but still. But Marvel comes along, and it is written to be a game that is not only fun to make characters for, that you can make any character for. It is a game that also decides very consciously to use comic book language to make characters, to explain characters, to define the powers and the abilities they can do. It also does a lot of legwork to provide you with examples of various things, so you know both where existing characters lie on the spectrum of stats and abilities and material strengths and all of that, but also where your new characters, your new inventions, fit into that universe. And then they have this system that flows so well when you're playing. Now, that said, I would have considered the system pretty flawless. Others disagree, and one of those people is Bear, the creator of this game. And to that end, he has taken the framework that begins with Marvel superheroes and created a true, worthy spiritual successor to the game. He has addressed some of the issues. He has names for them. I don't know if they're his names or names that he's borrowed from some dialogue on the game system previously, but he talks about, for example, the Aunt May problem and the Captain America paradox. And both of these are issues that are tied up into the rules. Captain America paradox, if you're not familiar, is, and I was not until he named it. I mean, I understand what he's talking about, but how Steve Rogers and Captain America in the original Marvel Superheroes game have very different abilities to inspire people, but they're still the same guy. So Steve Rogers is a natural leader, but his authority as Captain America is tied into his costume. So what Bear has created, for example, by creating the dynamic ability and all of that, is the ability to have a character who is natural but gains some advantages through their popularity, whereas it used to all be your popularity. Basically, Steve Rogers and Captain America had the same popularity. The Aunt May one is basically something he addresses in the system, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but so that kind of goes to the point of what it is that Bear has done with Heroic that makes it different enough and interesting enough to where you won't just, why would I buy Heroic? Why would I support Heroic when I already have Marvel superheroes? We have Marvel superheroes at home. Well, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, supporting independent creators is always a positive thing. Second of all, this is a new game that hopefully will create a living game that will go on for some time and create new supplements. Also, as I was kind of alluded to there, it does address some of the issues with the original Marvel Superheroes game and creates a more well-rounded game. And then the other thing is, especially with this, everything that you might already have for Marvel Superheroes, and for those who might be wondering which version I'm talking about, just to specify, I'm talking about the original one, commonly known as Face Rip. all of that old material is still compatible with Heroic. Because the system that Heroic is built on is an expansion of those old rules, all you need to do is add a couple of new stats to the new heroes and do some recalculations, and you have a heroic character. Um, good morning, mages, and Jason, welcome. And I saw Seraphis pop in as well. I know you can't stay long, but certainly good to see you. And this is the thing. I mean, Mages Musings points it out. So, OSE is a new, modern kind of restart of a classic game, and you can use all your old material with it. And hey, Cody. So as far as like qualifications for talking about heroic, I also kind of need to lean into that. I think a little bit. I am not involved in the creation of heroic. I am a friend of the creator. But I do have a shit ton of experience with the old Marvel Superheroes game. I've showed it off before, but I'm going to show it off again because, I think this is kind of a nice encapsulation. These are my characters. These are my characters, my NPCs, my organizations, and not all of them. That's the ones that survive from Marvel Superheroes. A lot of the characters are illustrated. I really was into it, super into it. We ran campaigns, we ran one-offs. I tried to a level of success to run a universe where I had several solo characters that I would meet with friends every so often to run games, and then we had one team group, and then I had crossovers, and ultimately was working towards some big mega crossover in that universe. So I feel like I'm qualified to say that I've played the original enough. Now, granted, this is a while ago. I mean, full disclosure, I haven't played too much recently, simply because other games of life. But I did run a campaign for my kids a few years back, and that went over pretty well, and it came back pretty easily. And I will say, as I've been spinning up my planned X-Men West campaign, I've been doing it using heroic, and it's kind of like getting the old adage of getting riding a bike, right? I'm getting back that groove of Marvel superheroes from back in the day when I was so in tune with that system when I was playing it heavily. I could literally just sit down and just turn out characters. And I think that's one of the real strong points of Marvel Superheroes, and then now this game. Heroic has all of those same things for it. Once you know the system and you know how all the abilities rate, it's real easy to find yourself never needing to resort to any of the character generation processes in the game to end up making relatively balanced characters. Well, not balanced, but playable characters. It's a comic book universe, so balance is really out the door. And there are elements in the game to rebalance things. You can get away with a lot using karma. But once you learn those terms for the attributes and you understand how simple a system it is, heroic is that way, in that to create an ability or a power, you really just need to be able to say what it does and have an idea what it does. Say what it is and have an idea what it does. And I apologize for parts of me disappearing. I wanted to have this backdrop, but it's the built-in green screen for StreamYards. Once you know all of that, how the abilities and the adjective-based ability system works, all you need to make a new power is to have its name, a brief description of what it does, and then a rank. So if there's a power that's not in the rules, it's that simple. I want, um, you know, well, it's kind of hard to think of a power that's not in the game because the powers are broad enough to where they pretty much cover everything. But if you run into those little niche things, like I want to have a character who can talk to armadillos and control armadillos only. Yes, there is an animal control ability, and you can assign a limitation to it. Um, but you can also just do armadillo control at excellent rank, and that's it. You now know that your character can control armadillos and at excellent rank. And if you ever needed any specifics, you could just refer to the base animal control ability if you wanted to, or you could borrow those texts. It's that easy. So this is kind of turned a little bit more rambly. It was in my head a lot more organized. Let me back up a bit. So, what is it that Heroic has done that Marvel superheroes didn't do? And I kind of hinted at that before. So, first of all, in the original Marvel superheroes, you had 4 physical stats and 3 mental stats. Each of those 2 groups, that was your face and your rib. Um, um, those 2 totals were then your health and your karma. Your health was your physical damage capacity, and your karma was your mental damage capacity. But it was also your pool for doing power stunts, and it was also your XP. Um, and so there was a lot really hanging on that one ability score, or that calculated ability score. So to that end, Heroic has added a 4th mental stat called Dynamic. And this is the force of personality that your character has. So it's actually kind of a good one. It's a charisma stat, whereas Psyche kind of filled the gap of a lot of things. It was really a lot of weight on Psyche in the original one. Psyche was your P to the face rip. And it was your mental strength, it was your personality, it was all of those things. So with Dynamic, you now have a force of personality. You have a personality stat, you have a charisma stat. And then on top of this, Heroic adds, instead of 2 calculated pools, it adds a 3rd. So you now have your health and you have your karma. Karma is now utilized differently. And karma is determined differently as well. And this is, of course, all going off of the 3.1 playtest document here. So, and then you have the new 3rd pool, which the name is currently it's referred to as metal, and of course that's still in development. But so metal takes the place of Psyche, or not Psyche, but what karma used to do. Where it's your mental damage capacity. That's your mind. It's your mental fortitude. Health is your physical fortitude, and karma, which is now a total of all of your attributes instead of just your rip, is karma is now a larger pool that is used differently than it had been before. So karma originally had been used for your experience. It had been used as a pool of expendable meta currency in the game where you could use to boost powers, to change roles, to do power stunts. And you can do the power stunts and all of that with it still. You can still use it to change roles, but now it's no longer your experience points. That is shifted to something new in the game for experience, which allows karma to be used more freely. Because one of the problems that you had in Marvel superheroes was people hoarding karma. because it was your experience points as well as the meta currency of the game, folks would tend to hold on to it and not want to use it. Because, and even though the risks of using it were not so bad as people would like to think they were, for example, the old power stunt rule, every time you wanted to use a power stunt, you had to spend X amount of karma. I believe it's 100 to try and do something new and interesting with your powers. Each time you used it, you rolled. Every time you used that same power stunt, the roll got easier. And eventually you would lock that power stunt in as a new power. So under those rules, there was always the possibility of you getting that power locked in before you spent the full amount, but you would never spend more trying to develop a power stunt than you would just simply buying the power, a new power outright using the XP systems. And so while the risk there is not really any different, because you're eventually going to get that power. So but the logic still held out that I don't want to necessarily risk my karma here in the short term because I want to save up to buy a power. Part of the problem with that too, I think, is the perception of a role-playing game versus what comics are. And if you're a comics fan, you know that characters in comic books don't really change much over time at all. Their powers don't develop much. Their skills don't develop much. While their outlook and personalities may shift a bit here and there, and they may make new friends and they may make new allies, they don't tend to change all that dynamically through their own development vis-a-vis an XP system, and tend to change more based on story beats. If you really wanted to make an RPG that was 100% comic book loyal, the GM would be determining when characters gained new abilities, because it would be a matter of story, and something would have to happen in the game for that to happen. So Heroic addresses the karma issue definitely, which is a strong point. Another strong point for Heroic is now all die rolls are opposed, and I never used to think that this was a problem, that that you just rolled against the chart based on your ability only. But it makes sense. It made a lot of sense when it was actually explained to me. I guess in a way, I started playing this game so early, the original game so early, that it just never occurred to me. We played it, we had fun, it was never a problem. But now that I've heard it explained, it definitely makes some sense, and that's I believe Bear calls it the Aunt May problem, and that's the fact that Aunt May has the same chance to hit, a bum on the street as she has to hit Spider-Man. And that's because she would only ever be rolling her ability scores to do so. Spider-Man, in the combat system and stuff, Spider-Man can choose to dodge, and there are things like that. So there was always that element to it. But if you have that opposed roll, you're kind of taking out your. It seems like by adding an opposed roll, you might be slowing the game down. But I believe you're also at the same time you're removing a lot of the reactionary elements in the combat system. And some people might say, well, it takes away my choice. But it doesn't really matter, because you're simulating a comic book. And so your fights here are not a blow for blow. They're more of a, it's the montage of the panels of the fight. So if my attacking you is now my fighting ability versus your fighting ability, we can assume that your roll on the fighting ability, or if you choose to maybe dodge, you might roll against agility. But now we're just rolling it now. We're not waiting for the results of that first roll and then you choose to do whatever. Or we kind of always were rolling in opposition. We're just doing it more succinctly. Because the way it used to go is like, I'm going to attack you with my fighting. I'm going to attack you with my sword. Okay, that's a fighting check. And then the guy I'm attacking is going to say, well, I'm going to try and dodge it. Okay, cool. Well, there's your, go ahead and roll to dodge. And then he would roll to dodge. And then we would find out how many column shifts my fighting was shifted by or my result was shifted by. And so we're just kind of cleaning that up. So that's good as well. In reading over, doing a quick read through the other night just to kind of glean some other stuff. Another nice thing is that Heroic brings in a stress rule, which I think is really a good one for comic books. And it might seem like, well, why stress? That seems like way too real world. I ask you and invite you to think about how many times in comic books you have seen a character's ability to function come down to their mental state. Not their damage and getting worn down, like mental attacks versus the mind or metal or whatever the final. That's the term there is pending, but right now it's called metal. So that's your hit points. So that would be like psychic damage. Psychic attacks are going to do psychic damage. But how many times have you seen characters in comic books get worn down in terms of morale, in terms of stress, and then the stress causes things to happen in the comic book. Their powers freak out. They go berserk. They panic and they stall out, and then something bad happens, and then they have to deal with that. The stress rule really brings in a good storytelling mechanic for the game, and that is, I think, an important and very gameable addition that comes in with Heroic. So there's some of the main mechanical beats that I'm aware of that the game has instituted. Again, just qualifying, I have not played a lot of Heroic. I've written some characters for it. I've watched some of the live plays, and I've talked to the creator of the game a lot about it. And I know the old system, the system that it's the old system. Heroic is not a Marvel product. It is its own thing that is based on the bones of the old Marvel system. And so those are the mechanical things that I think are different in Heroic and make it a definite improvement upon what I would have considered perfection in a game. There are some other things about the game that I do like, as far as the way that it sets up the creation of characters. So, if you went only by the rules as written in the books, you had random character generation, and then you had modeling. And modeling was kind of this suggested alternate set of rules, which, as I was speaking to earlier, once you know the system, you can create, pretty much any character on the fly without having to actually spend a lot of time going through the character generation process. Also, just to let folks know, after I say my piece, I will bring in some folks to talk about their experiences with the game. If they're available to do so, and then I'll throw up the link then. So, if you had access to other publications back in the day, like Dragon and Polyhedron, which was a really hard one to get because you had to actually be a member of RPGA, I believe, to get that one. There was an actual point buy system for the game as well, but the problem with all of those is like, so not everybody likes a point buy system. Um, Not everybody, but the random character generation left a lot to be desired. It really left you with strange combinations of powers. And we house ruled this a lot. Like I had a standing house rule that would allow people to hone in their power things. Like, okay, cool. You want to, if you rolled 5 powers and you've got like energy absorption and flight and energy blasts and plant control, and then like resistance to poisons, I would have, as a GM, let you remove the plant control and the poison resistance uh, from your roster, and shifted any one of your other powers by a rank. Now, this is a house rule that I used to do, which is funny because looking over the rules that Bear has set up in Heroic, there's something very similar in that, in the sort of building characters the heroic way, in the what ifing of the characters. And first of all, I love the use of the comic parlance for the what ifing. That's amazing. I mean, because so like if we were rewarding karma, um, extra karma for using comic language. Which, as a brief aside, is one of the things I really enjoy, because the ability score ranks, the ranks, not just the ability scores, the ranks in Heroic have been changed from what they were in the original, in the old Marvel game, um, to use some very clearly missed opportunities for those adjectives. So, for example, unearthly has become uncanny because they left uncanny on the cutting room floor, even though they had amazing. Um, because uncanny, the X-Men are uncanny, right? We had incredible in the original system for the Incredible Hulk, and we had amazing for Amazing Spider-Man. We didn't have spectacular. I believe we do now. Let me pull up the Unipage here. Look at that! Spectacular is 150. That used to be Shift X, and then we have Fantastic, which used to be Shift Y, and we have Legendary, which used to be Shift Z. So, and then it goes on to Wondrous, Epic, and Cosmic instead of Class 1000, Class 2000, 3000, Class 5000. So, and I realize I forgot to bring the graphic up here, but, here. So, the attention to bringing some of the language back in, the idea of having a system that allows for the random generation of characters, but then has a very intentional and honest and upfront part of the rules that encourages a dialogue between the GM and the players is a good thing. Most games have this implied in character generation. But the problem with the implicit elements in game systems is that it leaves it up to the players and the GM to remember that they're there. But then also, it makes it a choice as to whether to use them or not. And this then allows for players, whether that's on whatever side of the screen they're on, to just simply choose not to. And then reinforce this weird, well, that's what you rolled kind of an attitude, which is crap. In a lot of games that works. In D&D, what you rolled is kind of the be all end all. That's how D&D works. But when we're talking about superheroes, very few superheroes are written or created with completely nonsensical power bases. And having and encouraging this concept of the what if stage of character generation, where you as a player and I as the GM have this discussion about what works, what doesn't. Here's something you can do with your character. Here's an idea. And the nice thing about the what if too is that it's not even necessarily a matter of, well, trade that out for this or get rid of that so you can get a boost here. It's also an invitation for GMs and players to have discussions on how those things might be put together. Going back to the example with all the energy powers and then the plant control and then the poison resistance. Well, player, maybe you are a plant character, but you have hyper photosynthesis. And so you're able to absorb the energy and then you're able to redirect it to create energy blasts and manipulate energy fields. And this is also how you fly. Or maybe as part of your plant control, your flight is slightly weirder, like you can create little winglets or something of plant matter, and we're just going to keep it all in theme. But now you have an energy blasting character who's also a plant-based character, plant-themed character, and it works. The player may not have ever thought about that, but you as the GM seeing that opportunity, you've now given that player maybe a great idea for a character to use, and it really sings. It's something new. It's something different. It could work the other way around. Maybe the player sees the opportunity, and so the GM's like, do you want to get rid of that plant power on top of all that energy power? And he's like, well, no, because I have this really cool idea for, Captain Hyper Photosynthesis. It's like, and you could definitely work that in, but having that in there is a great thing for a game to have, especially a superhero game. So I've talked enough on my own about the game. What I'd like to do is go ahead and put in a link to invite folks who have played or have specific things to say about the game to come in and say a bit, and maybe talk about some of their experiences playing the game. My goal here is to expand knowledge and awareness of Heroic to people beyond maybe Bear's crew. I mean, I know there's a lot of cross-pollination between channels, but there's also some folks out there who, when they hear somebody who is the creator of a game talking about the game, there sort of goes in one ear and out the other, unless they're really actually interested. And so this is me as an old veteran player of the original Marvel Superheroes game saying that Heroic is the game that I really feel is a worthy spiritual successor to Marvel Superheroes. It is the game that perfects perfection in my mind. And so if I'm willing to say that, and I have put my money where my mouth is, I've both, backed the project, upped my pledge to get the hardback instead of the softbound, and I am a member of the Patreon. The Patreon, he's been releasing fun supplementary content over there. But I really want to say, like, my interest in Heroic is genuinely from a position of a player who loved the shit. Again, these are the ones that survived. By survived, I mean they didn't survive gameplay necessarily, but these are the ones that, the pieces of paper that made it through half a dozen moves and have stayed with me. They've always been important enough to keep. This game, Heroic, is the game that I can continue to use these in, but will give me a new basis to bring new players into the game. It's a product I can point them to that they can pick up, and I know they will enjoy because I know how much I've enjoyed this game, the original Marvel Superheroes game. The original Marvel Superheroes stuff, it's available out there. You can find it, but it's not a book that somebody can order and flip through and be inspired by. That's being created by amazing independent producers of content, and will hopefully end up on shelves at friendly local game stores, and has the potential to expand into a series of supplements and modules based on creative people who are inspired by the comic books universe. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and throw out an invite. And I'm going to throw it in the comments here. If you're going to come on in, I'm just going to ask that you have something to talk about heroic. Um, Obviously, we can talk about more, but there is. I know Coco and even Cody had expressed an interest of possibly coming in to talk. I know Mages, Sean, you're in one of Bear's games as well, and you've played with him a few times in Star Trek. Um, so yeah, it's out there in the comments. If you want to come on, let me know. But while we're waiting on that, so um, let me know if you would like me to post anywhere some of my old characters. Um, the best I can offer you is probably a cell phone camera snap and some commentary, because scanning it is a big thing. My scanner is not anywhere near my computer, and it's a pain in the ass. And they're all written on notebook paper, and they're all old and faded and stuff. But the game. So Heroic presents itself as a game set for a specific era of comics. And that's the other thing, that to speak to that, I will say that while it may be written with that in mind, just like Marvel Superheroes was written with Marvel in mind, that is by no means the limit of what the game can handle. We had played every universe. We created our own universes. We played in the Image universe. We played in the DC universe using the same system. And for example, Heroic is written with very much, I believe, a Bronze Age mentality as far as comic books go. I don't think that it would break. I know it won't break if you chose to play more of an Iron Age comic or Golden Age or something like that, because the comic bookness of it is still there. But so But what Heroic is doing in presenting that concept is giving you a tight base giving itself a tight base to write a set of rules around. It is creating a universe. I believe it's the Zenith universe, um, uh, and so you will be given a place to start playing if you wanted to. But there's nothing saying you can't play in your favorite comic book universe. I will be using Heroic to run my X-Men West game. I blathered a bit about that on my brief appearance on Bear's Heroic stream, but my X-Men West campaign is a what if sort of a campaign in which the X-Men create a West Coast division. Much like you had the West Coast Avengers, um, basically the senior X-Men decide that they need to have a established foothold on the other side of the country, making them able to better react to things that are happening over there, but also to have the X-Men and what it represents directly represented in that part of the country. Um, West Coast and East Coast politics and social values and stuff are different, and the X-Men for as a title has always been very socially and politically charged, both in terms of the writing, but also in the stories of the actual characters and what they're going through. It's a very much an allegory comic, and that's the wonderful thing about the X-Men. Moving to the West Coast also let me use an area of the country that I'm a little bit more familiar with, and so, um, but where I'm going with that is in creating that campaign setup. It's been the getting back on the bicycle for me. Everything comes back. The only thing that I have to do now is remember to add in the new ability score, the new damage pool, but And knowing that the ranks are named things that are slightly different, that also takes some doing, but I'll learn that. To this day, I can still quote from memory the original Marvel superheroes rank system because it was so intuitive. It's all adjectives. It's not about remembering that at level 30 you are plus 50. You know, I have incredible I have incredible rank, that's 40. I have amazing rank, that's 50. I have monstrous, that's 75. I have unearthly, it's 100. Knowing that the jumps get a little bigger when you get up to those higher level, like power levels, but I think that's a fair bit for comic books. Comic books are always sort of in this vague realm. Um, that's another advantage of the adjective system is that you know the amazingness of something in a comic book universe is variable. you know, it depends on the writer. It depends on the era of the story. It depends on the needs of the character, the plot going on. Golden Age characters tend to be a certain way. Silver Age characters tend to be a certain way, and the power levels kind of go along with those. Um, but I mean, if you're sitting here watching me and you're listening to me talk about this game, and you're wondering why heroic, it's just a damn good game. It's got a pedigree that is undeniable. Uh, it has learned from the mistakes of the original game and improved beyond them. It has learned from other new games and integrated those elements into it as well. There is the whimsy card concept, which are some playable cards that you can throw down to kind of create story beats that might not be on your character sheet. That's a great idea. That is a wonderful idea. It's a fun play mechanic that adds some stuff. Having quirks and weaknesses in the game is not something that was built into the original Marvel Superheroes game, but it is something that expands the game. It is definitely worth getting into, and I can't think of a superhero game. Hey, geek, how's it going, man? I can't think of a superhero game that is easier to pick up and more continuously fun to play and can grow to whatever degree you ever wanted to play it. If you want to play street level, Heroic will do it. If you want to play World's Greatest Heroes, Heroic will do it. If you want to play somewhere, in between Spider-Man out there doing his own thing, Heroic will do it. You want to get all cosmic and start playing like Heralds of Galactus out there, or the Space Knights, or whatever Green Lantern Corps kind of concept you want to play, Heroic will do it. With some of the future plans for the game, there are even going to be potentially new ways to formulate and create characters and abilities. That is also an amazing thing because one of the biggest problems with any kind of role playing game is if an element of the game does not click with the players, you're kind of done. Having a game system that says, okay, this kind of character generation maybe didn't work for you, maybe it doesn't resonate with you, but there's also this way, is immensely powerful as far as recruiting new players. even if it's not a matter of system preference, it can be a matter of system literacy or just general literacy. And by literacy, I don't mean like illiterate boobs or anything like that. I mean just people's understanding of things. Power character creation system A may not make a lot of sense or may not inspire or resonate with a player. Character generation system B may, because our brains work differently. And that's an important aspect. That's an important thing to consider. Yes, yes, yes. I know. I see. Ah, but yeah, that's beans. That's Dean. My wife is outside doing some gardening, and he is not outside with her, and therefore the world is ending. Usually he doesn't pick up on the mic, and that's annoying. I guess that he is. I apologize, but so I feel like I'm in the ramble stage. Um, I've said what I have to say about heroic. I don't want to like over talk it. It's just a damn good game. It's the game that'll do everything that you need it to do for superhero games. If you're really interested in my thoughts on running superhero games, there are definitely videos on my channel where I talk about why I think superhero gaming may be the easiest it's a type of gaming to run for GMs. And looks like I'm not going to get a lot of folks coming on. I know that availability was highly variable and up in the air, so we'll I get it. It makes sense that maybe folks can't make it here, but let's see. I haven't seen anybody pop into ye old waiting room, so let me take a look here. So Bear has sent me a link. I'm going to go ahead and follow this link and see what I can do. See if anybody actually wants to pop in and say hey. But yeah, I'm excited for this game. I really am. I have, I guess, another qualifying statement, whatever that means, is that I have I have bought a lot of the clones of Face Rip, of the old Marvel Superheroes RPG. It's insane to me how many times people have copied this system and just utterly failed. Or that's not fair. Have copied the system but not given us anything interesting or new. Let's leave it at that. Where I'm left looking at the game going, well, again, that statement of I have Marvel superheroes at home. Why do I need new Marvel superheroes? And so that's the thing, it's like it's one of those things where Heroic presents itself as a game that is worth my time in playing. It's lovely. It's a great system. My good lord, the Wizard Goose is popping up behind me. Let's see. It's all good, man. Like I said, I knew that a lot of people's availability to come on was highly variable. And so it's one of the situations where I wanted to talk about the game. Because I believe it's an important game. Not because I feel like it's going to change gaming forever. But I believe it's an important game because it does return an amazing system to the ecosphere in a way that has the potential to be a healthy and um, uh, I don't know, like just satisfying game. Um, exactly. So OSE, it's absolutely the layout because it is 100% the original game until you get into like OSE Advanced and stuff. But yeah, you definitely need to have something new, and Heroic is doing that. It's like I said, it's bringing the concepts of the original game to a new level of finish and learning from those systems that where it may have failed. And apologize if I'm doing some things here. I've got to real quick answer something, but yeah, it's just again, I don't want to beat it into the ground, but it's the game is not an if, it's a when. Again, not going to go into details, but here is the playtest. This is a fully functional game. This is a game system that has lots of love and lots of thought put into it. You've got all kinds of background material. You've got plenty of usable starting statistics for things. You've got sections on mind and magic. You've got all kinds of stuff going on in this game that are very much playable, thought out. I know this is a labor of love for Bear and many others who are assisting him with it. I mean, it's not like he's doing it alone. He's got help, and everybody who's in it is in it to win it, and they're definitely, their hearts are there as well as their minds. A good example right now, we got character creation. This is the basic character creation. 12 steps. That sounds like a lot of steps in character generation. It's not. It's just very granular and wanting to make sure that you understand it completely. But then again, we also then have this. We have an Appendix A, which is character creation redo. What is this? What is this? This is another way to create your character. And why is there another way to create my character? Because, like I was saying before, this may not resonate with your players or you as the GM. This might. And so having those options is great. And these options go a little bit beyond like what method are you rolling your ability scores on. These options do produce slightly different kinds of characters if going by the rules. They're never going to limit the kinds of characters you can play, but they're definitely going to change the way the character creation process flows. And I know that Bear and his folks have other things in the works for the future, which will expand on this even more. You got origins, discussing origins, if you want to expand on the origin concepts behind your character. You got callings. What is your calling? Your character's calling. Why are you actually out there doing the thing? Where do you come from? What do you know? What are you doing? Why are you out there? It's like, contacts. We get the base rules, and then we get all this appendix work to expand on that. Now, this is the playtest document, so what this will look like in the final version of the book remains to be seen. And that's okay, because this is a clear, concise way of looking at things. I'm sure this will all be wrapped in a nice layout in an amazing format. And some of it may end up on the cutting room floor. Some of it may get shifted off to other books. Some of it may get, who knows. But all of this stuff points to an absolutely solid game that is ready to go. Mind and Magic. talking about how magic and psychic powers work. Magic in comics is often a very nebulous thing. It's some fancy fingers and some cool drawn graphics with a lot of magical buzzwords like Eye of Agamotto and all that. Um, and and but it's never really explained because it doesn't need to be. Because for all intents and purposes, it's just new superpowers. But it often gives people the ability to do a lot more things than very defined power sources. Equipment, vehicles, and headquarters. Yes, there's a section on those. Why is there a section on those? To help you define in the game. Because remember, when it comes down to it, though, everything is a power rifle and a rank. Damage is excellent. Range is typical. Cost is typical. There you go. Material strength. Why do my items have a material strength? Because your superhero is going to grab a gun and bend it at some point. Whether it's bending with his mind or with his hands. He's going to bend it. Or his hand that disappears and his invisible hand. I don't know, because that's stupid green screen. Animals, bystanders, supporting cast. Absolutely amazing to have right out of the gate. This is useful stuff. Because you have to have people to save. There's always the possibility of being caught in a death trap that drops you in a pit full of crocodiles. And how does your weak telepath deal with a bunch of crocodiles? Here's where we get the whimsy cards explained. And I'm sure that when these come out, we'll actually have the whimsy cards available to us. And then we have a description of the Zenith universe, giving you somewhere to play from right off the bat. We have a description of some of the Zenith comics, heroes and villains. Here's some inspiration and reading lists. If you're new to the genre, or it's been a while, like I used to be really into comics, and then I kind of faded in and out, and yeah, I've kind of tried to come back in every so often, but I have no idea. But here's some great stuff to just read to learn what the focus is. Random encounter tables. These are awesome because one of the things I pointed out in my video on why superheroes is probably the easiest and most fun genre to play is that it's really easy to just sit down one day with the one player who is available for game and go, all right, you're on patrol tonight. And let's see. Well, we rolled urban incidents. All right, what's our urban incident? All right, we rolled a 32. A terrorist organization threatens to detonate a bomb in a crowded area, and the hero must locate and disarm the bomb before it's too late. There's a single night's game that one hero can handle. One hero versus some terrorists trying to find a bomb to save some people. Your game's still on. And when the players who weren't able to get there that week are back the next week, guess what? There's an awesome story to get them jazzed for playing the next game, to continue that saga. Maybe summer break hits and a bunch of your players go off on vacation. Well, you know what? You've got 2 or 3 of them left. You don't necessarily want to keep the main thread of the campaign going, so you spend a few weeks doing these random things. These are also great for determining subplots for things. While Doctor Doom is trying to destroy whatever, there's also this other thing going on. So that's all great. And then, of course, they're going to have, this is, again, the playtest document, so it's not overly finished. But one huge accomplishment, and this maybe is only really important to me. And I know this is something that Bear, I guess, we had found somewhere else, but I had never seen it. So if you're familiar with the old Marvel superheroes, this is the Universal table. It's a massive table of different colored rectangles and a whole bunch of different little subsections that mean different things. And it actually makes a hell of a lot more sense once you know about the system, how it works. Because you're only really ever looking at one of these things at a time. You're like, what is this? This is a lot to process. Well, Is the guy shooting? Or is he throwing a blunt object? Is he throwing an edged object? So that's, but one of the great things I think is what he's titled the Unipage. So all of this up here, this top part, has been condensed into a table that might be a little easier for folks to manage mentally. Because when you look at this, while it makes sense to me and it's a great thing, and people who love it, and a lot of people just jive on it, they see what is going on. Not everybody's good at tables and graphs. And so if you can give them this, which I'm going to call your attention just to this top right here, this is the same table. It's just presented in a very condensed, useful space that doesn't waste any space. It's a matter of, all it is the thresholds for each of those column shift areas, instead of showing every little brick in the wall. You're really just seeing those keystones for each of those levels of success or failure. I think this is amazing. I mean, this is one of those "where have you been all my lives?" I think the easiest tool I ever remember from the original Marvel superheroes was the wheel. They had a little wheel with windows that you would turn things. Okay, my power is amazing, and I'm doing this, and there's what I got. That was a cool tool, but it's also pre-internet. So what are you gonna do? We are at the hour mark. Normally, I would go on for another hour, but I feel like at this point I'm just inventing things to say instead of saying anything of actual use. But I want to thank everybody who showed up today. I'm going to end the stream a little early. And I will say, be heroic, back heroic, join the Patreon. It's all worth it. Make a dynamic check to keep going. I just don't have anything more to say about Heroic as a game itself that doesn't sound like prattling on about it. And I don't want to belabor the point. I could wax on about like my past exploits in the old Marvel game, but a lot of those were from when I was younger and stupid, and I'm not overly thrilled with them these days. But that's not that has nothing to do with the system. That's just the games I played and the games that we had. But let me say this: we had some pretty sweeping stories. We had multi-generational comic characters where we'd end up playing the son of. We had weird plot twists that involved sisters I never knew I had who suddenly show up as part of a villain organization, or characters who find out that while they thought they were a humble mutant, turns out they are actually Asgardian and they're the long lost son of blah blah blah, and all of the comic tropes you could ever want. We had characters who would die and come back. I remember running there's a villain in one of my games named Ripjack. Basically had a huge blade on one arm, very sort of, he was a big muscular guy, had sort of a skull visage mask. He got killed in one of our games, and then later on in that same in the same player character's career who had killed him, he came back having not being undead or having returned and actually wasn't actually dead. He was now possessed by a demon, and so he was now like a demon charged version of his original nasty self. That was a thing. We've had robot versions of characters come back. We've had the blasted into another dimension. The funny thing is, back in the day, we had things where like a character would get blasted to another adventure, and then we'd run an entire sub campaign of that character in that adventure. We had a lot more time back then because this is high school, junior high, and then the bachelor years. So certainly, the game again will do anything you want it to do. any comic universe can be played with heroic. Um, because heroic scales all the way down to the regular person, you could run a game where you're, if you wanted to, and certainly there's something to be said about this. If you wanted to play a game, excuse me, didn't get to the mute button on that one. If you want to play a game where everybody's playing regular people in a superhero universe, the game will still do it. The game will still do it. If you wanted to play completely powerless people, the game will do it. If you wanted to play Transformers, the game will do it. If you want to play G.I. Joe, the game will do it. If you want to play ninjas, the game will do it. If you want to play super spies, the game will do it. It is a universal game system that does not bog down in a heavy mechanical system to make that universal system work. And this is one of its biggest strengths over something like the hero system or GURPS, where the game will do whatever you want it to do without needing to worry about heavy math on ability scores. If you wanted to play something kind of hard sci-fi, I don't doubt that this game would do it, because you still have an ability, you still have all the material strengths and the abilities for lasers and vehicles and HQs and all of that. That's all in there. If you can have a world that has Iron Man in it, you can have a world that has power armored super soldiers fighting alien hordes on a far off world. You could do Conan in this. I mean, for all intents and purposes, Conan is technically part of the Marvel Universe too, because he has shown up in the Marvel Universe. But, I guess that's the final thing I have to say about this, is that we played everything we could possibly imagine in a comic book setting with this game, and it never broke. And when I say this game, I mean Marvel Superheroes, the game this game grew out of. I don't want to frame this game as just another Marvel clone, though. That is not my intent. It is so much more. It is fixed Marvel. It has grown beyond Marvel. It is its own thing, in the same way that it would be like saying Palladium is just D&D. The Palladium RPG system is fundamentally Dungeons and Dragons, but it's something way different. So is RuneQuest, but it's different. It grows beyond that. Heroic is that next stage of evolution for Marvel superheroes that will turn it into something new and great and continue the wonderful traditions that were created in the original Marvel superheroes into the future, and hopefully for a very long life. That said, I will thank again everybody who showed up, and I'm going to bid you all an adieu and go lend my wife a hand in the backyard on this fine Mother's Day. Be heroic. You got a mom, call your mom. Have a good one. Take care, folks.